On this episode of Bible Bros and Brew, we're going to continue our journey in looking at the subject of believing, and we're going to talk about what it means to believe. We're also going to take a look at a story of a religious leader and a woman who had paid doctors and who had spent all that she had for healing, and she never got it. But there was a currency that she hadn't spent yet called belief. And we're going to investigate that next on Bible Bros and Brew. All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Bible Bros and Brew. I am David. With me is Phillip, and today we are going to chop up more this subject of believing. But before we do that, let's talk about what we are brewing. Phillip, greet the people and show them what's in the cup.
Yes, gladly. This time around, I've got a special brew known as Columbia American Malt from Peregrine Roasters. It's fantastic. It's the notes of orange peel, vanilla, and whiskey. They age the coffee in whiskey barrels.
Okay.
Yes, the beans.
Not that
we've ever imbibed. Those days are long gone. But sorry. But yes, dude.
It may have appeared.
Wow.
It may appear that I had gotten a little overly excited about the whiskey.
Oh boy. Okay.
Because what's funny, and for those of you watching, we have a screen in front of us. I can see Phillip and I can see myself, and I saw my eyes get super big for whiskey, and it just struck me as I'm sitting here thinking, aged whiskey in a coffee. How wonderful that must taste.
Oh, God. Oh, boy.
Please do not overpartake in whiskey-flavored coffee in an effort to try to satisfy something from your dead life.
Yes.
That might not be your best option. However, when you come this way, or if you could just point me to where I might purchase that, it would be amazing. And
yes,
friends, I'll be happy to tell you about its flavor. Ooh, that caught me off guard.
Dude, that is bananas. But it is from Peregrine Roasters out there in Colorado, my good peeps. And I did want to highlight also the God Drums and Coffee shirt.
Come on, God Drums and Coffee.
Given to me as a gift. And those items are very important in that order.
Tell them who gave you the gift.
From my dear, dear mother.
That is so sweet. Your mama loves you.
Yeah, man. For my birthday, man, can't be. Yes, but anyway, lest I go down memory lane too hard. David, what do you have in your
I just have a regular old, it's not regular and old, but I'm drinking a Costa Rican from May's Coffee I think it's located in Dallas, Georgia. Really good, really smooth. But please don't think I'm downplaying it in light of whiskey coffee. So it's
Oh boy.
very good, and it's maize is one of my new favorite coffees there. So I was going to say cheers, but do you say cheers with coffee? I guess I'm still on the whiskey thing. Whatever it takes, I'm free.
We will have a
All right, we're gonna
service after this is over.
right. I think I'm gonna go dip in the water after we're done here, just to make sure everything got out. So we're going to continue digging into this subject of believe. And as we started our first episode of this, we talked about John chapter 6, and we talked about the concept of how Jesus said our work is to believe, and more specifically, to believe in him whom sent Jesus, talking about God the Father. Then last week, we looked at Mark chapter 9. And we see this story of, Jesus goes up to the top of the mount with Peter, James, and John, the Mount of Transfiguration, or which is really the Mount of Transformation. And they have this glorious experience on top of the mountain. And then they come down to the mount, from the mountain, into chaos. And in that chaos, we see Jesus connect with this father whose son had been basically demon possessed, and the father's heart's desire was to see his son delivered and well. And so he says to Jesus, if you can have compassion on us and help us. And Jesus's response was, if I can, if you believe, all things are possible. And so we talked about it was as if Jesus was putting the responsibility for this happening on that man to believe that it could. And there's no question that Jesus could do it, but faith was required, to believe was required. And that father's heartfelt cry was, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. And that's a cry that we all should be able to relate to. I shared with some guys earlier today in our Tuesday night group by letter that Jesus wants it all. He wants your belief and he wants your unbelief. And when you bring them all to him, he can do the impossible with it. So bring it all to Jesus is what we kind of walk away with on that. And then now we're going to look at Mark chapter 5 and see this story of Jairus and the woman with the issue of blood, two people who may not have even known each other before this moment happens, but they encounter one another, and Jesus is the centerpiece of their connection. What were you going to say, Philip, before we go there? Wow, that is significant. If only we could hear you.
Wow. I'm doing.
There's your whiskey.
Yes. Put the whiskey down, boy. But no, but I was just going to say that it's going to be fascinating to look into this whole chapter, Mark 5, and how we have to understand that there is a part that we play in terms of knowing how to connect with the power of God through our faith.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting because all through the ministry of Jesus on the earth, all four Gospels, you see the phrase over and over again, according to your faith be it done unto you. And
yes.
I don't think that's something that we can just overlook. I think that's something that we really got to think about in light of what we're going to read here.
Don't you think, Philip, that also means that we cannot take our faith and take what we believe casually, that there's a level of activity, action that should support that.
100%. Just think about James 2 when he said faith without works is dead. And he even said at the end of that chapter, he said, just like the body without the spirit is dead, faith without works is dead. In other words, faith without corresponding action, as we know.
Right.
I do believe that in the things of God, it's a cooperation. God does his part, but we have to do our part as well.
Right.
And in my mind, obviously we can't do God's part, but at the same time, God won't do our part. It's up to us to make that decision and say, I'm going to step out in faith. I'm going to act on what God said. That's something that he can't pick you up and carry you across the room and do whatever. You have to be the one to, and as we're going to see, I'm sure in Mark 5 here in a minute, but you have to be the one to walk out the things that God has put on your heart to do, or the things that he has said in his word to do. And in doing so, that is acting out your faith.
I agree. That's really good, Philip. That's really good. Let's just take a moment and let's even just define this word believe and what it means to believe. I'm going to throw this up on the screen for us kind of as a guide. So here's what we have when we look at the Webster's Dictionary. Webster's Dictionary gives us these two variations of what the word believe means. First is to consider to be accurate or honest, to accept the word or evidence of. And then the second version is to hold as an opinion. Now, we know that when we talk about our Christian faith, we're not talking about opinion at that point. We're talking about what the word says. But we do know that in our everyday lives, we see a lot of people who believe a lot of things.
So true.
A lot of it is their opinion.
Right.
And I'll just leave that one right over here on this little tiny bookshelf.
Right.
The second version of it is to accept something as true, genuine, or real. To have a firm or wholehearted religious conviction or persuasion. And I love that word because you're going to see it in the Greek in just a minute, that it's about being persuaded. And then to regard the existence of God, persuasion is, for example, to regard the existence of God as fact. The question that might be asked is, do you believe? In other words, do you regard the existence of God as fact? And then usually it's used with the word in. Do you believe in the scriptures? Do you believe in God? That type of thing. The second one is to have a firm conviction as to the goodness, efficacy, or ability of something. Wow. And finally, again, we see to hold an opinion.
It's interesting, man. In Hebrews 11, it says that without faith, it's impossible to please God, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it says, he who comes to God must believe that he is. I think it's Hebrews 11:6 maybe. But it says, he who comes to God must believe that he is. And like in the modern day translation, that would be, he who comes to God must believe that he exists.
Right.
That's the first hurdle that you have to, it's not even really a hurdle, but it's the first step you have to lock in before you can even get any further. But it says, when you come to him, you must believe that he exists and that he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I love that statement that I think is part of what we miss. Diligently seek him.
Yes. Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you're looking for him in the clouds or, ooh, Jesus behind this tree. No, it's to diligently seek him, as in through his word.
Yes.
And through prayer and communion with the Father.
That's right. Diligence implies faith, if you think about it. You wouldn't even be diligent about something that you didn't believe in. Right?
Come on, man.
So I think that just the very act of being diligent and seeking God, whether it's, getting up and reading the Bible every day, whether it's praying every day, just those basic, I guess you want to call them like spiritual exercises that we might do. Those things, in my mind, build your faith, because it's impossible to carry out those things on a regular basis without it affecting your belief level in some kind of a way.
Right. That's good, Philip. I love that. Let's look here at this next definition, which comes from the Greek. For those Greek scholars out there who are, particularly on YouTube, if we mispronounce this word, it's not a personal affront to your knowledge. Okay? We are admitting that we are men who make mistakes sometimes, so I'm going to now effort to pronounce this word, and you can do with it what you want. I think it is pistio.
I will not argue that.
Or it could be pistuo, whichever one. It means to believe, to entrust. It's used in the form of I believe, have faith in, I trust in, or it can be used passively as I am entrusted with. And then when we look at the Helps word study, I love how it breaks it down. It's from two words. It's from the Greek word pistis, meaning faith, and from the word pitho, I believe, which means persuaded or be persuaded.
Goodness.
To believe, to affirm, to have confidence. And it's used in two forms, used of persuading oneself, which is human believing, and with the sacred significance of being persuaded by the Lord, which equals faith believing.
Wow.
And then it tells us that only the context indicates whether believe is self-serving without sacred meaning, or whether believing is the believing that leads to or proceeds from God's inbirthing of faith.
Wow.
So I look at that as a little bit that human believing, as that's in your head, right?
Mm-hmm.
But faith believing is an inbirthing of faith that God does, that is in the heart of man.
Yeah, absolutely. It made me think of Romans 12 when it says that God dealt to every man the measure of faith. There's a certain measure that he's dealt to every person, a measure of faith. And I do believe that it's up to us what we do with it. I think that we can grow it. We can also do things to cause it to wither, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think one of those would be being double-minded about your faith. Because,
Phil.
James said, let not the man who's double-minded think he's going to receive anything from God, right? It's like, I see this as like, it's one of those things where God gives us all that faith out the gate, but then what we do with that faith is going to really determine whether or not we can live a lifestyle of faith or walk in a lifestyle of faith from there. But it's not something that's unattainable. He didn't mean for faith to be hard, I don't think. It's obvious that we have to walk by faith and not by sight. I know that means, that we, there's times when we have to, go against what we, but at the same time, that not walking by what you see around you, not walking by what you hear, what you feel, whatever, it's a matter of spiritual training. You got to get into the place of training yourself to be able to do that. And that's the good fight of faith that we have to fight to be able to consistently walk in faith. Hope I'm making sense.
No, that makes perfectly good sense. Forgive me to everybody else for I thought I was I'm trying to manage some stuff behind the scenes here and make sure Philip looks beautiful and all that, and I hit the wrong button, so it may have looked like a ventriloquist performance where my mouth wasn't moving, but Philip was doing the talking. It's not a lack of love. It's me adjusting. Sorry.
We wanted to bring some extra entertainment tonight.
Right. Philip, you talked about how we're given the measure of faith and we have a responsibility to grow it and to actually propagate more. It's the seed, right?
Yes. Yes.
But it reminds me of the parable of the seed, where every person was given, they started with something, and everybody's grew to different measures based upon certain actions, behaviors, and how things moved for them. If they let the cares of the world come in and choke it out, they didn't produce good fruit. If they didn't water and nurture it, if they let trouble and persecution come in and steal it away from them, they missed out. So we have back to the parable of the seed, that it's really the root of so much that we need. And then I'm going to jump back over here really quickly, Philip, and stop messing up the screen layout. The narrow down of all this is to be persuaded, to put confidence in, to trust, and to rely on. That is what it means in a simplified version, to believe. And then I'll remind you of something we said back on week 1, that belief is the seed it's like the husk the seed husk that contains your faith. When I believe, that I believe is planted, and the outside of that belief gives way to your faith tree, and all of the other pieces that come out of that. If you want some more clarity on that thought, make sure you go back and re-listen to the episode 1 of this particular discussion. So, Philip, we've kind of laid a groundwork here for what it means to believe, and even some other pieces that are within that. I think what we'll do, if you're cool with it, we're going to hold for the next episode to talk about Jairus and the woman with the issue of blood in Mark chapter 5, because there's a good chunk to get into there. But today we want to encourage you to begin, like Philip said, God is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. And so we encourage you to begin the journey of diligently seeking him. It really is. It's the way that you build your faith. It's the way that you grow more and more enamored and in love with God as you begin to understand more. God has a way of opening your vision and opening the eyes of your understanding to help you to see and take in more and see the sides of it. And it just becomes this big, wide balloon that you're like, wow, this is amazing. God, I want more of you. And he'll give you more. It says, draw near to me and I'll draw near to you. Philip, any final thoughts or words before we call this one a wrap?
Just to say that, believing, as we talked about a little bit before, I love how that definition includes being persuaded.
Yes.
It shows once again that it's an act of the will, that it's something that you have to decide to do. I have to decide to believe what God says. And I know a lot of times, people have this idea, well, I don't believe in anything. Some of you ever heard people say that? I don't believe in anything.
Oh, yeah.
Humans are hardwired to believe, okay? If you think about it, the very statement, I don't believe in anything, you actually believe that you don't believe in anything. You know what I mean? There's no way to get around believing. It's a part of your hardwired programming as a human being. It's just a matter of what you're going to choose to believe. And so I can't wait for us to dig into that more with the next episode.
I agree, Philip. Well, you guys have work to do. Work to believe. If you want to, we encourage you to go ahead and get out a little bit ahead of us. Spend some time reading Mark chapter 5. There's an amazing trio of stories there that are all interconnected. And it's all part of one journey. Jesus with the madman of Gadara, back in the boat across to the other side to Jairus, to the woman with the issue of blood, back to Jairus' house. So we challenge you, Mark chapter 5, take a look at that, and next episode, we're going to talk about that in depth.
Yes.
Till then, I'm David. He's Philip. We're glad you've joined us, and remember, you can always jump into one of our Tuesday night groups by going to foundationsgrp.com and connecting with one of the groups. The one for the ladies is She Is, and then the one for the guys is the Foundations Men Study. Those are both available to you. And as always, if you've got questions or comments, you can use the comment section of this tool, or you can reach out to us at gotbrew@biblebros.net. Till next time, enjoy your coffee. But not the whiskey kind.
Stay away from the whiskey.
Right. But I will tell you how it tastes next time, hopefully. Until next time, everybody.
Bye, guys.